Hey y'all, my name's Jerdy, and in this video we'll be going over Paladin tanking in Phase 2 of Season of Discovery. Before we get started, I want to talk about a few things, mainly being the reason it took me a while to get this video out. I wanted to make sure I tested out some of these specs before I sent this video to y'all. I wanted to make sure that we had the proper testing and theory crafting before I got this information out to y'all as well. A big shout out once again to the Paladin Discord, which I'll put a link in the description below for that. Without them, I would not have this video. A big shout out to 2 Valentino for posting all the specs that you can play in the pinned messages and SOD tanking in that Discord. If you have any questions, check out that Discord. You can message me, you can message anybody else. And with that being said, let's get on with the video. So before I get to the raid specs, let's talk about leveling specs. The spec I went with leveling was a Holy Red spec. When I hit around 26, I decided to respec Consecrate back ASAP just because I love the class fantasy of it. And then I started slowly rebuilding the red tree from phase 1. However, if you're trying to min-max, I would probably keep the red tree and then slowly build the holy tree and get Consecrate later, just because you're going to have Divine Storm, Avenger's Shield, and of Reckoning that already have good AoE and good threat for dungeons. Once you hit level 30, you can go ahead and grab Guarded by the Light, which each time you hit a target with your melee weapon, you gain 5% of your maximum mana per 3 seconds for 15 seconds. It's infinite as long as you're hitting people, but your Flash of Light, Holy Light, and Holy Shock spells are reduced by 50, which does not matter because we will be doing this in dungeon spams, meaning you have a separate healer. And how you get this rune, you have to go to Alterac Mountains. Right outside that Ogre Stronghold, you'll find a skeleton. You can click on it and get a Corrupted rune. You have to be level 30, like I said earlier, because you need Divine Intervention. You have to cast that on somebody who can res you back. Don't cast it on a hunter or somebody else, or you have to wait at least an hour to try it again. So running this build is really fun because you get almost infinite mana with Guarded by the Light and Hand of Reckoning paired together. You get a lot of AoE with Divine Storm, Avenger's Shield, and Consecration, and you just pull really good threat and good DPS, building a lot into the red tree. And while you're doing SM, it's easy because you can also pick up some of your Pre Raid BIS and Scarlet Monastery Armory and Cathedral. And if you get your hands on Ravager early, it makes those AoE pulls even more fun when that Ravager procs. Now let's talk about our raid specs. What can we do for raid? And this first spec I'm going to talk about is your pure parse DPS spec. If you loved playing two-hand tank and BFD, you get to do it again in Nomer. Just know it's the least mitigation tanky spec there is. This is for raids who have full min-maxers in your group, from your healers to your DPS to your tanks. Everyone's shooting for 99 parses, including you. We only put 3 out of 5 into Benediction because we should be getting most of our mana back from Hand of Reckoning. If you want to really min-max, since we just got a change to where Crusader Strike is going to be holy damage instead of physical, you might be able to get away with using Crusader Strike instead of Hand of Reckoning if you do really good damage and everybody in your raid has salve. Just know you're taking a risk because it is a threat reduction. Now, I just recently ran the red spec, and I gotta tell you, although my parses did jump significantly, I did not nearly have as much fun in this spec as I am playing the Shockadin spec that we will talk about later. It's just your buttons off cooldown. Yes, you do hold good threat. Yes, you do more damage, but to me, maybe I'm just over it from BFD and playing a red Paladin and Wrath, but it is your overall best DPS spec if you're trying to go that route. And it is fun because you still get to melt rogues, like the one right here trying to mess with me last night. And it does feel good because I hate rogues. Next spec I have not tried yet, but it is our deep Prot spec. This is our holy shield spec with our readout, toughness, shield specialization. You get more mitigation. We will also be running with this spec Divine Storm, Avenger's Shield, Hand of Reckoning, Guarded by the Light, and Sheath of Light. This is a pure mitigation tank spec. You will hold great threat with Hand of Reckoning and with Holy Shield. I'm not sure how well it'll run when you're running with a more high parsing group. It might not be the best one, but if your raid clears Nomergon 6 out of 6, you're not trying to parse, this will be a good spec for that group. And if you want to hold a little more threat, you might try swapping Divine Storm for Seal of Martyrdom, as you won't need that really for single target bosses. And since we're not running improved Seal of Righteousness, this would be more bang for your buck with your damage. These next two specs are little sub specs within each other. They're both holy Prot specs. One prioritizes a little more mitigation and Seal of Righteousness, while one prioritizes more DPS and TPS with Seal of Martyrdom. So as you can see right here, here are the two differences within these two specs. You can see in this one right here, we have improved Seal of Righteousness and Aegis. I pronounced it right this time, Aegis, and Guarded by the Light. Whereas in this spec, we use Seal of Martyrdom and the Art of War, Divine Intellect. Hey y'all, sorry to stop this, but starting March 6th, Improved Seal of Righteousness is also going to buff Seal of Martyrdom, so any specs that go into the Holy Tree that use Seal of Martyrdom are always going to use 5 out of 5 Improved Seal of Righteousness and not Divine Intellect like this spec said it's going to do. Improved Blessing of Might instead of Benediction. Both of these are very good specs for tanking. If you're in a pug, this is a good spec to run. It's a comfortable spec that will have you holding threat. There won't be any issues. I personally would pick anything with Seal of Martyrdom over Seal of Righteousness. I just think Martyrdom and Art of War are more fun to use with Exorcist. Also note that between these two specs, we use Exorcist for the Seal of Martyrdom Art of War spec, and we also use Avenger Shield for this spec since we're running Guarded by the Light and not Art of War, so we won't get those procs. There's no point in running Exorcist if it's going to be on the same cooldown pretty much as Avenger Shield. And the last spec I want to talk about is my favorite spec so far in Season of Discovery, and that is the Holy Shock Tank Paladin spec, or the Shockadin spec if you will. This is a really fun spec, and it's all about your Seal of Martyrdom proccing your Art of War. Now, I haven't talked about our runes too much, but the Art of War is a rune where your melee critical strikes can reset the cooldown of Holy Shock and Exorcism, and those two abilities have an 80% mana reduction when this rune is active. So we're trying to fish for Art of War procs with Seal of Martyrdom to get infinite Exorcists and infinite Holy Shocks. And this paired with Sheath of Light, which increases your spell power equal to 30% of your attack power, just really buffs and beefs up your spell power abilities, which is why we want Holy Shock. Now, we almost saw this spec go away completely when Blizzard announced that they were going to fix the bug that Seal of Martyrdom wasn't even supposed to proc Art of War. And the Paladin Discord and myself included lost our freaking minds for like almost an hour straight until Agrin actually replied to one of my tweets saying they were going to roll back on this decision and let us have some fun with the spec. So a big shout out to Agrin and the dev team for continuing to let us have fun with this bugged spec. Thank y'all so much for that. I love this spec because I like thinking about where I want to use Holy Shock on. Do I want to use it on myself, somebody else? Do I want to do more damage to the boss? It makes it more interactive and more thoughtful than the other specs we have. When you're going Holy Prot, you're just auto attacking pretty much. When you're going Ret, you're just hitting buttons off cooldown. With this spec, you're fishing for procs and you get to have a meaningful choice on where that Holy Shock goes to. And when you pair Holy Shock with Divine Favor, which is a 100% guaranteed crit of your healing, it makes for a great instant heal on yourself or others in the raid. I found myself using this on Thermoplug or Mechanical Menagerie when I knew my healers were going to be out for a little bit. This is the most fun I've had, like I said earlier, and the moment I get my parses done with the red spec, I'll probably hop straight back to the spec because I just like playing it so much. Talking about some easy pre-raid BIS gear to get, if you're dungeon spamming and you're doing Scarlet Monastery, you pretty much want to pick up everything that drops off of Herod and Armory, and you definitely want to grab the shield that drops off of Mograine and Cathedral. The hands are also really nice. The two-hand mace is nice if you're trying to go two-hand tank for red spec, but Bone Biter from the Scarlet Monastery quest that starts in Brother Anson and Desolus is better. And then the first boss in RFD drops a very nice chest for you. You won't replace that until tier chest. And the last boss drops a really nice helmet for you if you're trying to go more mitigation than DPS with the Raging Berserker's helm from Scarlet Armory. And then you want to do Oldemon. The first boss got his loot updated. He now has some blue boots with strength and stam. Alternatively, if you want more DPS boots, there's a really easy quest you can do starting on Booty Bay to get you shin kickers, its strength and agility, and more armor than Revelash's boots. It takes a couple death runs because there's no mobs where you have to loot the quest item. And the Ancient Stonekeeper has Cragfist with a random animal enchantment. You want the bear or of the tiger, depending if you're trying to go more mitigation or more DPS. If you got honored from Warsong Gulch in the last phase, make sure you grab the level 28 and the level 38 Protector's Band. The level 38 is BIS, and level 28 is pre-BIS until the Epic Ring, and it's not that much of a difference. So make sure you grab those rings. The neck is also really nice with this agility and stamina, great for tanking. But the strength and agility one from BFD is still your pre-BIS if you're trying to go more damage. And you can also pick up a level 40 version of Rune of Duty for some extra stamina. Continuing our conversation about PvP gear, the new STV event offers gear that's just too good and too easy to not get. So you get bronze coins for your blood turn-ins, and to upgrade them to silver, you need 100 bronze coins. This sword only costs 15 silver, and 100 is not a lot. I get about 700 to 800 per event, so that's like 2 or 3 of these, and you're already getting your arguable BIS two-hander. Even if you hate PvP, you're doing yourself a disservice not getting this. Get some friends, organize up, and get your coins and get this sword. The one-handed sword, I'm not going to talk about this too much because I know it looks cool. It looks like a Prot Paladin sword. It's not one of our best items. It'll work if you have it. I'm not saying just don't ever touch it if you want to use it, but there's just better options to use, and I'll go over that in a little bit. For 2 silver coins each, you can get either a 12 stam 82 armor cloak or a 1% crit cloak. You can also get for 5 silver coins a really nice AoE trinket with a 5-minute cooldown. I know I sound like a broken record, but this is all too easy to not get. Just get some of your friends, get in Discord, get some easy gear, and be banging in Nomergon. Now let's talk about that one-hander that I mentioned earlier and why it's not maybe one of our best options to get. And that's because in this phase, for both Seal of Righteousness players and for Seal of Martyrdom players, for anyone doing the sword and board spec, you want a fast one-hander, which I know contradicts what I said in my phase 1 guide. But in that guide, we were talking about red tanking being the best. And when you're red tanking and you swap to a sword and board, you wanted a slow one-hander for your Seal of Command. But now we're talking about Seal of Righteousness and Seal of Martyrdom. For Seal of Righteousness, you just want as many Seal of Righteousness hits as possible, which means you want a fast weapon. You want the fastest weapon, and the fastest weapon we can get right now is the BFD mace. I know I was pooping on that in my phase 1 guide, but now it's our BIS for Seal of Righteousness players. For Seal of Martyrdom players, we were running Art of War. So the reason why we want this is because we want to proc as much Art of War as possible, especially if you're a Shockadin tank, because you want to use Holy Shock and Exorcism as much as possible. The other reason is that Seal of Martyrdom is only locked to 2 weapon speed, one for one-hander and one for two-hander. The one-hander is 2.4 and the two-hander is 3.3, which means if you're running a 2.7 one-hander, you're not getting more Seal of Martyrdom damage than you would a 1.5 or a 1.3. Don't worry for both specs. If you sold your BFD mace or never got it, I sold mine and then realized Blizzard had turned off item restoration, so I didn't get to get it back even though I knew I had it. But you can get a really solid replacement in the auction house right now. It's probably only a couple gold. It's the Knightly Longsword of Power, the one with 14 attack power, because it's going to scale off our Sheath of Light, and it's a 1.5 weapon speed item. I use this tanking my Nomergons, and I got plenty of procs in my Shockadin build. So don't worry if you don't have that weapon. There is a great alternative in the auction house right now. For our Seal of Martyrdom players, our Shockadin players, your BIS is always going to be the needle from the Electrocutioner. That is our BIS. That's the weapon we want during this phase. Talking about your BIS gear, I won't talk about every single piece of BIS you want. Just know you do want the 3-piece tier set. You want the BIS damage ring and the neck, obviously. But let's talk about our BIS Professions for gear. You definitely want to go blacksmithing and engineering if you're trying to truly min-max your DPS and your mitigation and your overall threat. The blacksmithing helm, which thank you Blizzard for putting this off of our tier slots, has 20 strength and 14 stamina, crit, and it has an on-use effect for 20% attack speed and spell resistances. It's just too good for tanks to not have. Engineering, they get this really cool shield that if you're trying to go sword and board spec is also just too good to turn away. If you're wanting to go and try the new alchemy stuff or the enchanting stuff, by all means do it. Go for it. It's season discovery, try the new things, but I highly suggest going blacksmithing. The helmet is just too good to not have. Your consumes for this phase will now be 12 stamina, 12 spirit food. There's a bunch out there. I believe tender wolf steak is the cheapest. Still ogre's strength. Now we have 15 agility elixirs. We also have elixir of defense. And this is a big one. I think I like using lesser stone shield potions, especially if you're two-hand tanking, because you're basically drinking a shield for 1.5 minutes. And some last little tips and tricks for Prot Paladin in this phase. Make sure you have a Righteous Fury weak aura. I'm embarrassed to say that there's been too many times I've gone into the raid after a wipe or something, or after I died and I forgot to reapply it, and it just led to either me dying again or the raid dying again. So don't be me, be better than me, and get this weak aura. Make sure you have start attack macros. It really helps when targets die and you can swap easily to another one. Make sure you have your bubble, cancel bubble, keybind macro. It's very helpful for Thermoplug when you're trying to bubble off any of the stacks of his debuffs. Make sure you get World Shrinker, especially if you're a dwarf. It is our BIS toy. Look how big we are. We get to be a big Chad dwarf. This is your BIS item in the entire game forever. Don't miss out on this. And lastly, make sure you're having fun. Play a spec that you like to have fun in. I like parsing, but I also love the Shockadin spec, so I will definitely going back and forth on those. I hope you're having fun in this phase. I think that's all I have to cover. I'm sorry this is late. I kind of got a little discouraged when I saw that just now. This is like the midpoint of the phase. I put this out way later than I wanted to. I hope this still helps you guys out. The good news is though, we're getting that leveling buff. You can still level a paladin and still know how to tank if you haven't already. As always, thank you all for watching. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for saying hi. And I'll see y'all in the next video. And I'm trying to get more videos out there faster, especially in the later phases.